ripping off the Band-Aid. It's an idiom meaning an uncomfortable but necessary action to minimize the effects of fear and pain associated with it. Tech companies do this all the time. Google, Microsoft, especially Apple. They take away all of these features near and dear to our heart and bring them out back to old Yellow Room. I like it as a verb. In this video, I want to highlight some of the more prominent examples in recent memory of brands that maybe got rid of features a little too early for comfort, and how ripping off the Band-Aid can not only be a bad thing, but also how it can help move the industry forward. Let's talk about Microsoft and the saddest console of them all, the Xbox One S all-digital version. Of course, the rest of the Xbox Ones had disk drives, but what this did do was set a precedent for the next generation in the Xbox Series consoles. Now, I really love the Xbox Series S even despite all of its trade-offs. But something that you guys brought up in one of the first Denki videos I ever made on the Series S is that it doesn't have a disk drive, a sore point that many people will never get used to. This means not being able to play any of the physical titles that you might have collected in the past, whether it's from the original Xbox, Xbox 360, or even the Xbox One, and almost forces you to subscribe to their Game Pass service, which might have most of the important exclusives people want, but this isn't a proper solution if you want to own your games. Again, the Series S is a great deal and a good entry-level console this generation, but if you have a huge collection of physical titles on the Xbox, you probably look at the Series S differently. We can't talk about ripping off the Band-Aid and not mention Apple. God, there's so many to even talk about. They took out the headphone jack, the one-port laptop, the SIM card tray on the iPhone 14 Pro. There have been so many times where Apple has either taken away features or pushed their agenda on us so strong where the market hasn't had time to adjust, leaving us scrambling to figure out what to do with our lives. All right, let's talk about some of these. Probably the one that stands out to most of you is the headphone jack. This has been the butt end of jokes for the past couple of years in the tech community, especially here on YouTube. Not a directly personal experience for me, but I have a lot of friends that play rhythm games on iOS, and when the headphone jack died, they were scrambling to figure out how to play these games optimally. In Apple's ideal world, people would use Bluetooth headphones, but that introduces latency, which is counterintuitive to those kinds of games. They did offer us an alternative. Of course, it's just a little dongle that costs $9, but it's still an extra accessory that they have to use to make something that already worked work. Also, they really did just leave us with one port, meaning if you wanted to charge it, you'd have to rely on Qi. Of course, MagSafe didn't exist then, so unless you were holding a Qi charger to the back of your phone while you're playing a rhythm game, things were pretty hard for you. Oops. Now, for the rest of us, luckily, Apple's there to sell you a pair of very expensive Bluetooth headphones for you to make do. But man, not being able to use the cheap earbuds that you were used to using day in and day out kinda sucked. Or not kinda, it just sucked. But above all else, Apple removing the headphone jack from their phones also encouraged the rest of the industry to do it as well. You weren't even safe if you were an Android user. Even though companies made fun of it left and right, they ended up doing the same thing anyway. Then, around the same time we lost the headphone jack, we also lost the home button. Starting with the iPhone X, Apple decided to remove the main physical button to have us rely on gestures to get around the interface. Back then, it was quite the change, especially since we dealt with generations and generations of iPhone with the same muscle memory over and over again, getting to our home screen with a press. That was the pure definition of ripping off the Band-Aid. No transitions or anything. Or what about the iPhone 14 Pro omitting the SIM card tray? Now, I've been a user of eSIM since the iPhone XS. Back then, it was still a relatively new concept on a phone and required some customer service trickery to get running on some carriers. But now in 2022, with the release of the iPhone 14 Pro, there were a lot of people still having issues with carriers connecting their phones. Sometimes it's not just consumers, but even Apple's own partners that are left to pick up the pieces as a result of their big leaps. And just like the home button or headphone jack, the SIM card might also be on its way out. And we have Apple to thank for being a catalyst. Apple does a lot of wacky things with the iPhone, but we also gotta talk about the MacBook. Remember the 12-inch one? With the one USB-C port? And it's the absolute worst because it's a device that absolutely needs more. How many peripherals do we plug into our computers every single day? Thumb drives, keyboards, mice? I mean, it's a laptop for God's sakes. You have to charge the thing. Looking to do any combination of them? Well, it's welcome to Dongle Town. So much for simplistic design. But what if I told you that ripping off the Band-Aid is a good thing? On the 12-inch MacBook, we might have lost a useful connector in MagSafe, but a reversible cable is infinitely better in my opinion, even though I might have dropped my MacBook on the floor as a result. How many years have we been asking for it on the iPhone? I mean, this device can shoot 4K ProRes with video files as big as like 100 gigabytes. We have to transfer all of this stuff to our computer to edit on Final Cut on USB 2 speeds or over AirDrop. The one port to do it all is something that we look forward to on so many devices that we hate it when it's missing on them. It's seriously annoying when USB-C can go upwards of 40 gigabit in terms of data rate. All this with the iPhone is kind of ironic considering the fact that Apple was the main driving force in pushing USB-C forward. But also, it's kind of Apple to be hypocrites, so. However, something that Apple got very right was pushing the development of Bluetooth headphones forward, specifically with AirPods. They're super convenient, they're easy to use, they're very lightweight. It's very easy to forget nowadays that when AirPods came out, they were the first good, truly wireless earbuds, meaning full freedom to move your head around without worrying about a dangling cable, and they were seamless to use. But by far, the best thing was the pairing. Combined with an iPhone, the user experience was incredibly easy. You just opened them up, put them in your ear, and they just magically work. All thanks to Apple's proprietary hardware and software built on top of Bluetooth to effortlessly connect the two, offering virtually no lag, especially when watching video. Look, AirPods are so important to the industry that, like them or hate them, you'd be hard-pressed to find a company that doesn't make a direct competitor to these products. Countering some of the points I made in the negative parts of this video, let's talk about the home button. Yeah, a physical input feels way nicer to use, but I do love the fact that I have a bigger screen to work with, and for me personally, I think gestures are easier to use regardless. Though, the best Band-Aid that Apple ever ripped off was getting rid of Intel. This was, of course, their switch to their own in-house silicon, specifically with the M1. In another video a few weeks ago, I talked about my first experience with using a desktop OS on ARM, a la the Surface Pro X. But it left a really bad taste in my mouth going into the Apple Silicon transition. M1 really surpassed my expectations, especially with the Rosetta compatibility layer on top of macOS to help you run legacy apps, which meant that if this was your first time running a Mac ever, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference if you were running an Intel-based system or a new Apple Silicon one. In other words, seamless. If the Band-Aid came off, many of us didn't feel it, which really is the best case scenario. Even then, they still marked 2 years to fully make the switch off Intel. In essence, Apple ripped the Band-Aid off and kissed the mark too. The fact that I can carry around a 14-inch MacBook Pro in my smallest backpack and have all of the horsepower to edit like 8 streams of 4K ProRes is insane. Not that I really do that, but it's good that I have that power. But if you're getting tired of the Apple examples, let's run it all the way back to the Xbox. The Series S might drop the disk drive in favor of a better price tag and forcing you to play your games digitally, but especially for newcomers to the Xbox who might not have the back catalog of games physically, a service like Game Pass is honestly perfect because it already offers most of the popular titles people would want to play anyway. And for Microsoft, it's a way way for them to sell the dream of their ecosystem. I know I'm gonna seem like a Game Pass shill, but I actually play Xbox more because of it. I've said it once in another video, and I'll say it again. I don't think companies are out here trying to make bad products, at least as the intent. However, we as consumers might see it differently, but we're also not the ones spending billions and billions of dollars analyzing trends and figuring out what consumers want. At the end of the day, ripping off the Band-Aid might hurt now, especially for the consumer. But companies can foresee trends way better than any of us can. So I think it's worth giving them a benefit of the doubt, regardless of where that takes us. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, please hit that subscribe button. We're about to hit 100,000. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.